I am Laura, a member of Sea Change Crew, a team of 6 women specializing in nature technology, sustainability, and environmental sciences, who took part in Gibro Challenge in the summer 2024. So I'm your host today, and we are talking to Jacques Villemot, who's the Marine Rewilding Coordinator at Rewilding Britain, an organization dedicated to restoring ecosystem and biodiversity across the UK through large-scale conservation and natural habitats restoration projects. So hello, Jacques. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, hello, thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a bit more about Rewilding Britain, kind of its history, its main aims, and its main activities?
Of course. So Rewilding Britain is quite a new organization as far as things go, because this was created in 2015. So yeah, not even 10 years old just yet. But it's an organization that's extremely fast growing, because I think it's just in sort of an increasing hype, I guess, behind the concept of rewilding as a solution to a lot of the issues that we are facing with climate change and the biodiversity crisis. So rewilding is a concept that has a fair bit of wind in its sail, and it's just sort of telling a bit of a story of hope, I guess, that people are starting to really get behind. And I guess it's organized behind a sort of a big, simple vision, which is to have at least 30% of Britain's land and seas rewilded in rewilding by 2030. Which, I think is quite important to sort of move away, I guess, from the idea that a lot of rewilding can have a bit of a sort of negative stereotypes. And I think the organization is working really hard to move away from that and to say that, rewilding is not about removing people from the equation, but it's very much having sort of nature and people at the center of it, and nature to deliver for us in many ways. And so, the organization is really working towards that, and to have some of 30% supporting variety of human activities. Really sort of supporting nature recovery. And it's working, I guess, around 5 key pillars, which are sort of being visionary, being inspiring, pioneering, collaborative, and credible. And, what that means in practice behind those very sort of broad terms, is that the organization tries to be very bold, I guess, in the way that we represent rewilding within the wider conservation movement. But also sort of be very, very keen to be always working in partnership, always working with other organizations, within the policy world. And for example, recently we had the Restore Nature Now movement, and the big march in London, and, we were part of that. And that was something really positive, I think, to be seen alongside of those big organizations. That's exactly where we want to be. But also sort of in practice with developing the Rewilding Network, which is a big network of initiatives that deliver rewilding on the ground. And of course, everything that the organization does is very evidence-based, has to be grounded in science. So we're really trying to keep that sort of credible element at the center of it.
So rewilding, you said there's kind of a confusion about its meaning, or maybe Rewilding Britain has its own meaning attached to it. So what's the meaning of rewilding for Rewilding Britain?
Yes, I mean, I think it's not so much, I guess it's not as much confusion, I guess, as almost a bit of a bad rep, because when you talk about rewilding, especially terrestrially, I think people imagine, wilderness being something where we kick people out, we put a big fence around nature and we let it grow back, and we're not allowed to go in. And that's so far from the idea that we have of rewilding, which is having, so I guess 30% that is in rewilding, so in recovery. And that is, of course, there's an element of removing human pressure and allowing nature to recover and to be restored. But there's still enabling and supporting a lot of human uses that will benefit local communities. And so, things like, like grazing and recreational activities, this sort of thing, that's still very, very much encouraged within those areas. In the marine environment, it's a little bit different, I guess, because people are, I suppose, a little bit more accepting of the term rewilding at sea, because I think we imagine the sea being something very wild still, even though practice is unfortunately probably not the case. So like plastic bags at the bottom of marina trenches, sort of things. So it's unfortunately, as a human impact, has reached very, very deep and very far. But I think it's a concept that potentially has a bit less controversy, I guess, because people imagine the sea being a lot wilder and being a lot. It's not something that we can dominate, I guess, as humans. But yeah, the concept is very much applied similarly at sea. So it's having areas where you still have some level of sustainable and fishing, for example, that can be supported as long as it doesn't impact the recovery. It's still very much something that can be supported. You can have recreational activities. You can have all sorts of things that take place within those areas, but with the end goal being really recovery and the large scale restoration of our seas. So that as well in the 70% remaining, you can really reap the benefits, I guess, of sort of that big engine machine that is nature that's doing so well in this well-connected 30% area, and that spills over within the wider area.
So you mentioned a few mechanisms of rewilding here, like which is kind of conservation and rewilding have kind of overlaps as well as with restoration. But you mentioned more sustainable fishing and things like that. But how do you kind of monitor and measure the rewilding, the scale at which it's rewilding or not rewilding?
It's a very good question. So we have a lot of work within the organization at the minute to develop a monitoring system. The organization I've been brought in October last year to sort of develop the marine strategy and the marine side of the organization. But before that, it was very mostly terrestrially focused. We had some marine projects as part of the network, and some marine work already took place. But yeah, mostly terrestrial, and so we're having a big project at the minute within the organization to develop that monitoring at the mostly terrestrially, and that is something that we're looking to implement at sea in time. But there's already things that we know will work well. So when you're talking about large scale restoration, you want to be talking about sort of seascape restoration projects, and not only looking at like one habitat, one species, but almost and maybe something we can expand a bit like, but like shifting a little bit the paradigm of current conservation, which is very in the UK is focused on like habitats and species. You restore specific habitats. Your protected areas are only looking at like how the porpoise is or specific elements in the seabed, I think, and trying to move away from that and to look about the whole site. Looking at natural processes, what connects every species and habitats together, and trying to safeguard this, because this is where you really sort of trigger that large scale restoration and then allow all those benefits that nature provides us to spill over to the wider seas.
How do you combine conservation, restoration, and rewilding? Which one comes first? I feel like conservation is maybe the most. It's difficult. There's like overlapping concepts. How do they relate to each other?
Another very good question. I mean, it's. I think conservation is maybe probably the first step. Is to try and keep that picture in time, save that picture in time. We realize a lot of the marine protected areas were designated fairly recently, and they are designated on already quite, I guess, a damaged baseline. You're safeguarding a picture in time that is already quite degraded. A lot of the damages have happened, in the past century or so, and so you put a bit of a frame around this protected areas, and you say, okay, now we stop damaging it, but it's already a little bit too late, and so we need to start triggering recovery as part of that restoration. And that's where you start thinking about maybe you can replant seagrass here, or you can passive restoration is very positive as well. Like I saw you had the Sussex Kelp project on your podcast, and that's an initiative that we follow very closely, because it's really interesting to see how that's another element of restoration. And then I guess rewilding is keeping those two concepts, conservation, restoration, active and passive, and sort of taking, I guess, a step further of looking, okay, now you have your seagrass that's doing well. How can you enhance that? How can you connect it better with the other ecosystems around it? Maybe if you have oyster beds there as well, there used to be oyster beds, and potentially, if they were able to recover, then it would clear the water and sort of facilitate the growth of that seagrass here that relies on light to grow as a plant, And equally, after that, if the seagrass is thriving, it will help with ocean acidity, which will help the oyster to grow, because it will stop the hindering calcification, this sort of thing. So it's trying to look at the bigger picture and help restoring all those little processes that help them thrive amongst each other.
Yeah. So instead of the species itself is more like the process. So you kind of find these high impact species like seagrass or oysters you mentioned, and those through their own life will affect the wider ecosystem and allow more species to come in. So there are kind of key species to focus on.
Exactly. So there are some rewilding champions, some rewilding superstars, I guess. And yeah, like oyster, seagrass, kelp. These are all near shore ecosystem that are known to have huge amount of benefits. And so that will sort of, I guess, pull a lot of great things behind them, and so they are sort of key habitats to look into. But I think it's when we're talking about rewilding, I guess it's not forgetting all the others as well alongside it, and so it's trying to, I guess again, like move away from only focusing on these habitats, but to see them as part of that bigger mosaic of habitat species and just ecosystem in general, that need to thrive all together to really mean that we have a healthy marine environment that's able to be resilient to the challenges and that's able to support us as a species as well.
So what's the vision of Rewilding Britain for marine ecosystems then? Is that kind of focused on those processes that we've just mentioned?
Absolutely. It's very much our vision, our goal is to have, I guess very much in practice, moving away from the high level things, but it's to have large scale restoration on the ground that looks at that seascape approach. So with recent papers, like I think literally yesterday, that was announced by Blue Marine Foundation in partnership with others like University of Plymouth and University of Essex. So I was looking really at the benefits of seascape restoration, and that's something that's very close to the organization's heart. I think as Rewilding Britain into our vision. Yes, it's going to be translating that on the ground through a large scale initiative, connecting all those practitioners on the ground through the Rewilding network to sort of create those bigger projects. But that's also, offshore, looking at protected areas and again, they're, moving to a whole site approach to how we protect and manage these sites. Because active restoration at sea is a really great thing when it's possible. It's amazing for a variety of reasons. It gives that sort of extra boost to trigger nature-led restoration. Sometimes there's not enough. We remove so much oysters, for example, from our or seagrass, and over 90% from our coastline. So if you don't go out there and plant it, there's just not enough to regrow. So you're going to need to go out there and get your hands dirty and plant and release, and that's really great. But for so many other habitats, like sandbanks or mail beds or all this sort of thing, we don't know how to restore them actively. We don't know how to recreate them. And so we need to start thinking as well about removing the pressure and supporting that nature-led recovery when we aren't able to give it that extra boost. And so again, the kelp story, for example, is a really good one there of, sometimes the best thing you can do is not doing a whole lot and just making sure that you protect the area, you monitor it, and then you make sure that you give it the best condition possible for the ecosystem to restore itself. And so, so that's something we're looking at as well offshore, with shifting the protection to much more holistic protection, looking at, of course, banning bottom trawling, but beyond that as well, safeguarding not only specific tiny areas within protected areas, but safeguarding the whole site in the water column.
And it's exciting because there's a new project coming up that are kind of use the term seascape, so it's kind of becoming more widely used as a method.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's pretty cool. And how does the network works? Does it, is there much interaction, or is it kind of like a resource database at the moment, or how do you get on it?
So it's in the marine environment. It's the marine side of the network is a little bit, I guess, greener. Ironically, than the terrestrial one. We haven't been developing it as much, I guess, because the organization has been more terrestrially focused historically. Yes. But that's exactly the idea, is to have, Rewilding Britain aims to support projects on the ground, and so that's partially with through funding as well. We'll have like various funding rounds with like the Innovation Fund, which is like twice a year supporting like 5 and 10 projects, I suppose. And then the challenge fund, which is once a year for a bigger pot of money, to try and support those projects within the network to be really innovative, to, try and we know that restoration and rewilding in the marine environment is terrestrially actually is still a very, very new thing. And so there's a lot of it's going to be a lot of trial and error, I guess. We don't know very much what we're doing, and we need to figure it out. I guess we need to find out how to do it, how to best do it, what not to do, what works best in which condition. And for that, they need to be able to projects need to be able to access pots of funding that will reward processes rather than outcomes. It's absolutely fine if it doesn't work, but just record what did and what didn't, so that we know for the next time. And in the marine environment, especially now, which is because restoration is so new, then that's exactly what we trying to support. And so, we're developing the network at the minute. We have over 30 projects currently within the network, and I think the goal is to keep increasing that. There's a lot of existing forums and things already existing, so we don't want to duplicate or to add meetings or to add to what everyone's already so busy. So we're trying to add value, I guess. And so we're really working with the projects that are currently part of the network to be like, okay, what would be helpful for you? How can we support better? Cool. And so we're finding a few routes for that at the minute. Through sharing other funding ground, sharing information, putting people in touch with each other, sharing best practice, all this sort of thing is very much where we envisage ourselves to be. To join the network is very, very simple. You can just go on the website. There's an option. You can join it, because we know that sometimes, rewilding is still terms that can cause some controversy. You can choose to remain anonymous and to not put yourself on the map, for example, and to just have the benefits without having any of the issue. And as well, we aim to try and support and showcase this project as well through, webinars that are directed only to the members. If you want us to share some of your wins or things like that on our social media, that's something that we can do. So it's trying, to be as helpful as possible, really, to the people delivering on the ground. And then for us, I guess it's really helpful. So I come from more of a policy background traditionally, and for me, it was a really, really interesting shift to be able to move to sort of a bottom-up approach to policy. So I could talk to the network. I say, okay, what was the key blockers to rewilding on the ground? What are you struggling with? And from there, we're having this really clear case study that says where we're really struggling with licensing, for example, we're really struggling with funding. We're really struggling with, protecting what we were rewilding. And so, okay, very good. So then we have those case studies, and we can bring them up to government bodies. We can go and try and develop our advocacy really around the needs of practitioners on the ground. And so that's something that works really well, I think.
Tell me more about that. So that's your background in policy. So what kind of path did you follow to get to that? And how did you end up in Rewilding Britain?
Yeah, so my background, so I started, I moved to UK back in 2012 to study politics and international relations with biodiversity, and then decided I really wanted to work in the marine environment. So I went and worked for an NGO overseas that works specifically in sort of sharing experience of marine reserves with local communities to show that if you protect an area, it will recover. We would take school and local communities to guide the snorkels in protected areas and non-protected areas to show the difference.
Cool.
And as well, sort of educate on and raise awareness on the benefits that these reserves could have for them. And then moving back to France, I then started working for the French government. So I worked for the French Ministry for the Environment on international legislation. So things like the treaties for the high seas and OSPAR, which is sort of the multi government body organization that manage the environment of the Northeast Atlantic. So did that for a year, and then I moved back to UK, for a couple of years, then moved back to UK to the masters in marine systems and policies, and started working at the RSPB, so very large NGO working for the protection of birds as a marine policy officer there, so particularly around seabird protection, which I absolutely loved. And then moved to Rewilding Britain in October because I wanted to move to a bit more, I guess, of getting a bit to that vision, I suppose, of that seascape and the whole site, and shifting to I guess the bigger picture. Well, that's not fair to say, seabirds are the bigger picture, but having a bit more of that more holistic and practitioner.
Maybe? Yeah.
Sorry?
Holistic?
Yeah, holistic, exactly. And having as well that closer link, I suppose, being in a smaller organization with the work on the ground.
It's a great progression, because you got to speak through your work with policy, you got to speak with the people on the ground and learn about the barriers, and now you're able, through Rewilding Britain, to support them and informed by your own experience of what people have needed and have struggled with. It's a great experience to have. Yeah,
I mean, it's been working really well so far. So I hope, it's I do see the benefits of it for sure. It's been a good path, I think, and I can really appreciate it now.
What's the kind of breadth of themes in the project that you support in terms of the marine environment? We mentioned some the kelp, we've mentioned some the seagrass. What's the kind of list of topics that are being worked on?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah, so there are some that are more restoration focused, I suppose. So, like you said, exactly. So, there's the Sussex Kelp project, for example, that's part of the Rewilding network. So, focusing specific, especially on mostly on kelp, I guess, and in its recovery in the Sussex Bay, following the bylaw to ban bottom trawling. And then we also have projects up in Scotland, for example, Seawilding. That's a really sort of pioneering community-led project to restore seagrass and oyster up around the west coast of Scotland. We're also working with Coast, for example. That's a project in the Bay of Arran, community-led again, no-take zone that sits within a larger protected areas, but was monitoring a little bit the impact of removing fishing pressure from a small area and seeing the benefits they can have. So this quite a broad range, and we also work with projects recently done in Sussex again, but we've funded through the Challenge Fund the Sussex Bay project. Which is a really large scale sort of project that covers the whole of the Sussex Bay to try and coordinate again that a seascape scale approach to management of the bay, bring together. So I think it's over. It might be I think it's over 200, but it could be a lot more. I forget the exact number, but it's at least 200 and potentially a lot more. But a lot of different players basically, with from local industry, local charities, less conservation, but also more social focused, really local communities as well, community groups, local councils. So trying to bring everyone together to have that bigger picture and connect it as well with some of the terrestrial initiatives to have that really, really large scale vision all the way from land to sea, through rivers and all the way offshore. So trying to really bring that again, that's that innovation side of it and that bold side of it to try and see whether that can be replicated elsewhere and how can that support the recovery and the rewilding of our land and seas.
So because what happens on land affects the sea through runoff and stuff like that, how much of your work involves working with your land counterparts in the organization?
It's all very connected, absolutely. So the network, for example, is not land and sea. Sure, there's some channels that are more specifically to talk about specific challenges, but the idea is to really connect everyone. And so I work very, very closely with all my terrestrial colleagues. I mean, I'm the only marine specific member of staff in the organization, but I work so closely with everyone. I mean, it's a very, very collaborative organization, even within our midst. And so I'm part of a sort of a team within the organization that will have some terrestrial colleagues and myself. So we really try and keep that vision to particularly, well, not particularly, but to really encourage projects as well to keep that in mind and to see if they can connect with projects. There is initiatives that can lead to this, and so many other organizations are are doing this as well. Like the Wildlife Trust, and for example, in Cornwall, recently launched their Tour to Shore project, which is trying to connect that as well to terrestrial sea. So there's others that are doing really, really great work in this space, and so we're trying to follow that path and to do something similarly here, because like you said, it's all so connected, and agriculture runoff down in Bedfordshire could have impact on the coast much further down. So it's something that we really need to keep in mind.
Can you do rewilding in kind of urban environments that, have a connection, like on an estuary or something? What kind of rewilding can be done there? Because you mentioned at the beginning, rewilding is not about kicking people out.
Mm-hmm.
It's about kind of building up nature alongside people, if I paraphrase correctly. Absolutely. So how do you do rewilding in an urban environment?
Yeah, but so typically that's the questions that we're looking into with the Sussex Bay project, for example. Mm-hmm. That was one of the big sort of interest we had in the project, was that it's on the Sussex coast, which is one of the busiest coastline we have in our country. I'm based in Brighton, and we can see every day how busy. And if you've ever been to Brighton on a sunny weekend, the beach is just heaving with people. And so we're trying to really develop the rewilding approach in areas that are busy with people, to show that it is compatible. And so it's just a bit of a, I guess it's that change of paradigms, that change of approach, and that change of ways that people see our environment. But it is perfectly compatible. Sure, you might not be able to have sort of those core rewilding areas where you remove most pressures and let really nature sort of regrow on the Brighton seafront. But you could have it a bit further off, and that will sort of trickle down, spill over the effects all the way down to the coastline. It's about managing activities locally, so raising awareness on the kind of species we have within the bay, to try and make people aware of how they behave. There's some very, very basic things that you can do around raising awareness around sort of behavior around the coastline, behavior around sort of certain species, whether it's like urban gulls all the way to dolphins for people that go out on the jet skis and things like that. But there's also some more sort of bigger things they can do around fisheries management. And so that's working very closely with the local inshore fisheries and conservation agencies to implement things like the bottom trawling bylaw, for example, and to sort of support the recovery of those ecosystem. Because not all activities will have the same level of impact, and sure, recreational activities have certain negative impact on certain species, but they are a lot more compatible with rewilding in many ways. And so that's something that we can work with, and then encouraging transition to less impactful fishing methods, less impactful recreational activities as well, to an extent, and trying to really ensure that you can have those really, really dynamic areas that are healing and that are living alongside a healthy nature, and everyone will benefit from it. I mean, imagine if all of a sudden in the Brighton coastline you could go out snorkeling more often than you can, and you can see a lot more species, and so you're only going to benefit the area and the local tourism. It's a win-win for everyone, I think.
And people forget, with new generations, there's a baseline shift. So people forget how much life there was, kelp, seagrass, but also just fish.
Absolutely.
Not so long ago. So to have historical records, or all the people tell the stories of when they were young and they could go snorkel and see all this life, that personally really motivates me. And I'm also a scuba diver, so I know already what I'm saying, which is kind of degraded, is already great to see and just inspiring. And so knowing that it could be so much more is such a powerful driving force.
Completely agree. And with in Sussex, there's an organization called Sussex Underwater, and that is driven by people going out diving and showing what they could see, and showing how much the baseline has shifted, exactly like you were saying. And it's really interesting to see the reaction that people have to seeing that there's rays and there's still sharks, and it's a lot rarer than they used to be, and that's a shame, but they're still there and they could come back, and people are blown away by that. Even the other day I was on the beach and I see people picking up the whelk egg case, because they look a bit like polystyrene, I guess, and throwing them out, thinking they're rubbish. And it's you have such a strong disconnection. Actually, no, just a washed up egg case, and And when you show people again, like there's a mermaid person and like the sharks and the rays egg case on the seafront, people are blown away by that. They see it, they don't really know what it is, and they don't realize that you have rays and you have cat sharks and all sorts just across. So it's trying to reconnect people to nature. And I think once you show them, then there's a whole lot of interest and appeal to people to do it right and to reconnect with it. So there's particularly, I think in those very busy areas are particularly interesting for that as well.
I remember I saw my first shark egg, so mermaid spur. So in Malta at 17, and I thought it was maybe like a bit of dried algae or something. So I completely understand people who kind of see it for the first time. But for me, like once I started scuba diving and seeing things underwater, I couldn't go back. It's just too interesting a world. Would you agree with the statement that rewilding is kind of picking pace in the UK?
Absolutely.
Cool. So do you think that's because we've gone too far in the kind of degradation and disconnection from nature, and people are like, I want to go back? So there's kind of like a swing effect where we're swinging the other way now.
I think definitely. I think that's a big element of it. People are increasingly anxious about the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis, and people are very much, I think, longing for nature and to reconnect a little bit. And it's so hard nowadays. Even when you go out in the British countryside, on the British coastline, to find those areas where you feel like you're out in nature. That it's not been modified and it's not heavily managed. Those things is really difficult. And so I think people are really, really longing for that. That's for sure. I also think that rewilding is really powerful because it offers a big story of hope. I think you have those case studies. There's an episode just down the road from where I am, and there's some sea wilding or Bay of Arran, and where if you remove pressure, if you sometimes give a little boost to nature, and if you support that nature recovery, he will come back and he will help address a lot of the issues. He will, protecting the coast, like the coastline, and enable coastal ecosystem to recover. Will supports your adaptation to climate change impact. It will protect you from floods and coastal erosion. It will, it will deliver a range of benefit. Support your local fisheries. Support your recreation, support health and mental health in general. All these sort of benefits, and people see that it's possible. It has happened, and if you start thinking about it on the bigger scale, then maybe we will be okay. And then I think that's something that's really powerful for people. And so, he's really picking up. We see it every day, and we see how even just the space at which the organization has grown is a testament to that, I think, and to how much we hear about rewilding nowadays. Even restoration conferences, anything like that. Rewilding will have a central part of it more and more.
When did Rewilding Britain start?
2015.
2015. Okay. And I think the concept of rewilding is so powerful also because it's like very proactive, while conservation may seem it's proactive, and normal people, everyday people not working in that field at all, they can contribute directly through volunteering and stuff, because it's a scene where you need a lot of like hands. But compared to conservation, where it's kind of like, okay, if you look at fisheries conservation, where you have maximum sustainable yield and kind of protected areas, it's all kind of administrative and decided by and managed by people in the government, or so it's very kind of remote from the local communities. And while rewilding, which encompasses aspects of restoration like seagrass, I volunteered for some seagrass restoration projects near where I'm based, and it's very hands-on, and people without a lot of expertise because you don't really need expertise to like go out and snorkel and appreciate the moment, and you get taught how to look for, in the case of seagrass, the flowers, the seeds, and then while you look for that on the snorkel trip, you also find like some animals or stuff you don't even know what it is. And it's just like, I think that's why rewilding and restoration is so powerful, because one is proactive and people feel like we're claiming it back. We're claiming like the wildlife back, the wilderness back, but also they can directly contribute to it.
Absolutely. No, that's yeah, very, very well put. I think you're absolutely right. And there's so much amazing practitioners on the ground delivering it that will be requiring those extra hand, and they will have the expertise, and like it's not going out there and trying out what you want in your patch and things like that, because of course everything is a very, very careful balance, and you need to but there are some people that will be able to help you out and take you out to sea, and they will require your hand, and you get to feel very much part of it. That's something we really, really are at sea at the minute. This really big barrier to that, which is sort of another sort of a big policy barrier that we're working very hard to try and address at the minute. And we'll have a big brief and a lot of work going on in the background on that. But that's around the consenting regime and the licensing, I guess, which is basically to do anything at sea, whether it's going and build a jetty or going and create an oil and gas drilling platform or anything like that. You need a license. The government needs to check your activity. Says, okay, I understand. You understand the impact. You've done your work. Here is a license, and you can go out and do things. And it's the same for restoration, because there is some guidelines that need to be protected. You can't go out and just plant everything. Like if it's your back garden, everything will have an impact on the wild, because you need to have those safeguards in place. But at the minute, because restoration is so new and rewilding is so new, it was developed far before it was really a thing that we needed to worry about.
Yeah,
and it's really not adapted, and so that means that it really looks at the impacts of any activity, but not the potential benefits that it has. And so, for example, when you're looking at seagrass or oyster, maybe you're going to have an impact on what's there, but what's there is already very, very degraded. And so you're going to have an impact on the sandbank, but it's because it used to be an oyster reef. Yeah. So, okay, sure, you may not have a sandbank here anymore because you're going to have an oyster reef, but maybe that's not a bad thing, especially if it's not under protection, things like that. So, it's a big barrier at the minute that means that communities, often community-led projects, are really, really struggling to go out there and start those initiatives, because you need to work with a consultant. It's so bureaucratic and administrative, and it's really hard to navigate. It costs a lot of money. The timelines are really complicated to navigate, and so it's a really, really difficult process. That's very okay to navigate if you're a big old company and you have you can pay a fortune consultants to go out and do it for you, and have all the compensation and so on. When you're a local community-led group that's trying to do the right thing, so it's just not adapted at all to it. And so we're really trying to work to have that a bit amended, to be able to have something that's a lot more friendly to those initiatives and adapted to those initiatives, so that they can be encouraged and develop. And like you said, we can have more groups that can go out there and do the right thing, and I guess take back ownership of their coastline, and of their because that's how people will care about it. It's if they feel like they are contributing to risk restoration, to risk recovery, I think.
Yeah, feel that they have a stake in it, and that because at the end of the day, whether there's seagrass or not seagrass, or lots of wildlife or fish for local fisheries or not, that's like the impact is on the local community, that they're losing out cultural heritage from these seagrass. They're losing out just the discovery of nature and new species, and the mental health benefits. If something's polluted, like it's not the infrastructure that's being built there to exploit something that's getting the negative impacts of it. So local communities definitely should have a say. So I hope that your work contributes to facilitating that process, definitely. And also it's interesting because it reflects the shift from having to conserve and protect to actually not just what are the damage or the impact, but what's the positive impact. What's the benefit? And the fact that it wasn't like the policy framework wasn't set up for that highlights how it was not in the mind, like it was not in the general national mindset when they started giving out those licenses. It was just kind of all control, damage control, and not creating value. And now there's all this talk about a nature positive, not just nature neutral, or So yeah, it's how do you add value alongside human activities? So hopefully, yeah, policy will change around that to reflect the kind of new priority and new mindset.
Absolutely, and I think and again, and it's especially because it's only going to accelerate. I think, and that's why we're really trying to reward innovation within Rewilding Britain, and because we need to find more ways that we can restore our seas, more ways that we can find ways to actively rewild where possible, and to see what works and what doesn't. And so we really need to look at rewarding really good processes, really good science and trials of these active restoration where they are feasible, so that we can have more of those initiatives. So that's very much something we're trying to do, and hopefully the policies will support that more and more.